Welcome to RetroQuest. This is the show that gives me an excuse to revisit games from yesteryear on retro consoles with original hardware just how they were intended. I'm Jay, and today I'm playing Guardian Heroes on the SEGA Saturn, which was originally released in 1996. Now this is my original copy from my youth. I'll be playing that on my original SEGA Saturn, and I'll be using this controller variant, which I've since discovered is one of two different controllers released in the Saturn's life cycle. I will confess, I don't know which way around they were released, but this is the controller I associate with the console. Anyway, without further ado, let's boot up Guardian Heroes. Guardian Heroes is a 2D side-scrolling beat-em-up with RPG elements. The team behind the game called it a fighting RPG. It was developed by Treasure and released for the SEGA Saturn in 1996. A sequel was made for the Game Boy Advance called Advanced Guardian Heroes, which I didn't know existed until doing the research for this episode. The original is often celebrated as one of the best games for the SEGA Saturn and the best beat-em-ups of the genre as a whole, praised for its deep gameplay, multiple endings and a unique soundtrack. The game allows players to alter their storyline through their actions, such as choosing between a number of branching paths, leading to multiple endings, and killing civilians and enemies, leading to changes in the karma meter. The gameplay of Guardian Heroes is noted for its combination of button mashing accessibility and the potential for intricate combos, appealing to both novices and experienced players. The combat system includes a unique visual depth with 3 lanes that characters can jump between, which helps to clarify when hits will land. The story of the game is an interesting one. A supreme being creates the universe to find ultimate warriors to hire as its personal soldiers. A vicious battle was waged between the Earth and Sky Spirits, and the Sky Spirits bestowed incredible powers upon the humans, effectively making powerful wizards for their own gain. The human wizards joined the effort against the Earth Spirits, banishing them into darkness, and soon after this was accomplished, the Sky Spirits grew fearful and jealous of the humans, and banished them also into the darkness with the Earth Spirits. Mankind instead opts for a more physical approach to life, and the time of the sword began. One of the human wizards, Kanon, escapes his imprisonment with the Earth Spirits, and comes back to the surface to get his revenge on the Sky Spirits. There, he brings his case up with the existing Khans, and since they do not trust him, he destroys them and replaces their kingdom with a wizard kingdom, with puppet Khans to do his will. The former king prophesies prior to his death that should his reign and the time of the sword be brought to an end, then the sword would resurface and in turn bring an end to Kanon's reign. As a precaution, Kanon banishes every existing sword in his new kingdom, but he overlooks one particular sword, belonging to a fierce anonymous warrior who fought to the death during Kanon's takeover. Also, the former Princess Serena survives the ordeal and joins the band of knights to try to bring about Kanon's end from the inside. At the game's start, 4 warriors, Han, Randy, Nicole and Ginjiro, find the sword of the valiant warrior. Serena arrives to warn them that the knights have learned of their possession of the sword and are coming back to take it back. The 4 flee their home as it bursts in flames during the invasion and then escape the town via separate ways, rendezvousing at the graveyard nearby. The leader of the Black Knights, Valgar, awaits them there, accompanied by a powerful robotic warrior. They're unable to damage it with normal weapons, and Han resolves to use the new sword against the robot. The sword is struck by lightning, electrocuting Han and causing him to lose his grip on it. The sword then floats over to the burial mound of its original owner, who rises up in zombie form. Enraged, he obliterates Valgar's robots and attacks Serena. However, the 5 discover that the warrior obeys them, and they resolve that with this new ally, the time to begin an attack on Kanon's new kingdom is at hand. From here, the story splits into various paths. Some involve ultimately fighting against the Sky Spirits, Earth Spirits, and/or the supreme being that made the universe, while others wind up with the warriors ultimately defeating Kanon, only to have to defeat Super Zer, or various rogue robotic warriors that he'd left behind, led by the nefarious Gold and Silver.
Are you done?
Pretty bonkers, right? I honestly don't think I had any real awareness of this story when I played it back in the day. In addition to the story mode, the game includes a versus mode wherein up to 6 players can compete using any of the main characters, including unlockable monsters, bosses and even civilians, in a time battle or to the death. Guardian Heroes was exclusive to the SEGA Saturn, which contributed to its initial under-the-radar status. However, its reputation grew through word of mouth, and it became a must-have title for the console. Development of Guardian Heroes started in June 1994, and according to former Treasure designer, Billing Cafe's Mad Stalker Full Metal Force and Capcom's Alien vs Predator were the main inspirations for Guardian Heroes' design. When asked why Treasure chose to develop a 2D sprite-based game when video game sales were increasingly dominated by 3D games, and when nearly every other Saturn developer was concentrating strictly on 3D games, a Treasure representative commented, "Treasure has built a tremendous knowledge of 2D sprite know-how. It's an asset that we wish to continue using, and no, we didn't think it was risky. In fact, the risk is in trying to make a new game. There are a lot of companies that have tried and failed to make successful 3D games, and besides, 2D and 3D games can exist alongside each other." The game's graphics, while pixelated on modern displays, are nostalgically appealing, and the Saturn original is particularly revered for its charm. The game was later released on Xbox Live with optimised graphics, online play and additional game modes, including an expanded competitive mode that supports up to 12 players. For the XBLA release, director Tatsuhiki Kikuchi returned to create new artwork and assisted development, and when preparing for the project, Treasure discovered all the source code for the Saturn version was stored on cassettes. The company did not have the equipment to read the tapes, so they had to borrow equipment from various divisions within Sega to build an environment that could retrieve the source code. I remember this being re-released and snapping it up immediately. I'd always thought of Guardian Heroes as a bit of a hidden gem, being locked to the Sega Saturn, famously underwhelming console from a sales and reception perspective. Coming to the Xbox Live Arcade at this time was huge, as this was the heyday for Xbox Live Arcade and its overall popularity. The remastered version of Guardian Heroes for Xbox Live Arcade was actually released in October 2011. The port makes numerous changes to the original, and it was reformatted for 16:9 aspect ratio, expanding the overall playfield. The game features both original and remixed graphics modes and runs in high definition with a remade user interface. The remix mode applies an upscaling filter along with a pencil shade effect to all of the sprites. Players can also choose between original and remix options for the gameplay, and remix mode makes many changes to the game's controls and mechanics, but it doesn't impact the level design or the content. Some of these changes, like the new attacking and dodging controls, air dashing and air recoveries, were modelled after Treasure's own Bleach: The Blade of Fate, a fighting game that likewise features elements of Guardian Heroes. The script for the story mode has been rewritten and contains updated dialogue, as well as changes in name to the Earth and Sky Spirits, who are now known as the Earthblood and the Skyborn, respectively. The XBLA release also features online play for the multiplayer modes and an expanded competitive mode that allows for 12 players instead of 6. Arcade mode on Endless Survival Gauntlet is a new addition as well, and one that all fans enjoyed. This version was made backwards compatible with the Xbox One on November 16th, 2016. If you haven't played it yet, you can go and pick it up. Despite some criticisms of the updated graphics in the remastered version, the animations run smoothly and the game retains much of its original appeal. So how was the original received? The 4 reviewers of Electronic Gaming Monthly praised the game's combos, multiple paths and inclusion of a versus mode. Rad Automatic of Sega Saturn magazine also praised the multiple paths through the game, but expressed the most enthusiasm about the high difficulty and the 3 layers on which the action takes place. He concluded, "Innovative, challenging, exciting and tough, Guardian Heroes is a classic in every way." GamePro, on the other hand, lambasted the game's long-winded dialogue and graphics, saying that these poor, simpering graphics have no place on a next-gen machine. Colourful doesn't always mean clean, and there are plenty of jagged edges, pixelated fighters and breakup. Despite this, the reviewer gave the game a strong recommendation, describing it as the true successor to the likes of Streets of Rage and the Golden Axe series. He elaborated that Guardian Heroes retains all of the fun of Streets of Rage's beat-em-up action, but enhances it with new additions like multi-hit combos, linking moves and a branching storyline with multiple endings. Tom Guide of Computer and Video Games magazine argued that the rough, blocky graphics which GamePro had criticised are in fact an asset, and since they allow a greater amount of action to take place on screen at once, he called the game a monumental achievement, additionally praising the multiple routes and the flamboyant excess of the versus mode. His co-reviewers concurred and were enthusiastic about the replay value of unlocking characters for versus mode. Yasuhiro Hunter of Maximum said that the Treasure's first attempt at a next-gen game combines everything they do best, frantic action and in-depth storyline with great character design. He reported that the action and RPG elements are both easy enough that enthusiasts of either genre would find the game accessible, but highly praised the game's replay value. A reviewer for Next Generation had a more mixed reaction than other critics, commenting that Guardian Heroes may be the pinnacle of the side-scrolling beat-em-up genre, but even the best is still a bit on the mindless side. He remarked that while the graphics' lack of slowdown and 6-player versus mode would thrill die-hard beat-em-up fans, the average gamer would find the game fun but repetitive and lacking in originality. Electronic Gaming Monthly awarded Guardian Heroes the side-scrolling game of the year, explaining that the different characters and numerous special and magical attacks, branching storylines and the versus mode all combined to make Guardian Heroes one of the best, most memorable games of 1996. Following year, EGM ranked it number 66 on their 100 best games of all time, saying it had surpassed the founding games of the beat-em-up genre. Retrospective feedback on the game has continued to be positive. IGN staff writer Levi Buchanan ranked Guardian Heroes third in the list of the top SEGA Saturn games, and Games Radar ranked it as the 5th best Saturn game, stating that Treasure's original 1996 release remains a wonderful co-op beat-em-up with impressive presentation and exciting combat. It was ranked as the 4th top beat-em-up video game of all time by Heavy.com in 2013, while Screw Attack voted it as the 5th best beat-em-up of all time in 2023. Time Extension includes the game on their best 25 beat-em-ups of all time as well. I spent many hours playing this with my friends in my youth, and I had no idea of the game's reception. I didn't really care either, to be honest, about these sorts of things then, and in general, the pre-internet age, I didn't have access to all of these opinions. My Sega Saturn was actually bought by my grandfather, and it remained at his house for us to play when visiting for a number of years, before eventually coming home with us. And I think I picked up Guardian Heroes from a second-hand video game store, purely based on the cover art and the imagery on the back of the box. It's been fun to learn all these years later about its status as a top-tier side-scroller, and also the reception it received at the time. In summary, Guardian Heroes stands out as a classic of its time, combining engaging beat-em-up action with RPG elements and a compelling narrative structure that encourages multiple playthroughs to experience all the different paths and outcomes. That's it for this episode of RetroQuest. If you play Guardian Heroes, then let me know in the comments. I'd love to read your thoughts and your memories on this game. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.